GTA 5 is a game I've played for countless of hours, but there's one place I've almost completely ignored. The water. And it's not because there's nothing down there, no, there's actually a surprisingly amount of work, care, and detail put into the ocean of GTA 5, but rather because what's lurking down there has been haunting me since my childhood. And I know it might sound a little over dramatic, but it is actually true. However, as I ventured deeper and deeper into the ocean, I started questioning myself. Are the things down here really as scary as I remembered? Are there even anything cool down here to begin with? And well, not only did I find more things that I can possibly cover in this video alone, shipwrecks, crashed airplanes, mysteries, and conspiracies, but what surprised me the most is that I also ended up finding something that surpasses even my childhood fears. Something incredibly real and quite terrifying. Real quick, before we head into all the aquatic discoveries of GTA, the last video I released ended up at number 1, like the most hyped video of the week on the US Hype leaderboards. So I just wanted to give you a massive thank you, like that is actually wild. So if you are on your phone, feel free to use one or even all 3 of your weekly hypes on this video, and let's see if we can somehow do it again. So anyway, I started my journey on land, specifically right here, outside of Jesus Christ, are you okay? Specifically right here, outside of the casino in East Vinewood. And this little pond here is surprisingly lifeless. There's nothing here but sand and my own thoughts. And this got me thinking, if this place is so damn empty, is everywhere equally as empty? Good bagel, guys. So, I went looking. See this pond here? All empty too. This lake up in Vinewood Hills? Also all empty. I mean, sure, there's some rocks down here this time, and admittedly, it's some pretty cool rocks, but there's still no life, no fish. None of that classic rockstar charm, care, and attention to detail you've come to expect from their games. But one of the weirdest things is that people like this guy right here are still somehow fishing in these empty ponds with no fish in them. Everywhere I went looking, I kept finding the same thing. Huge bodies of water with almost nothing living inside them. They're all mysteriously empty and barren. It's not until we make it a little bit further that something changes. Something finally happens, and it's right here in this lake. The lake of the Tatavium Mountains. I hope I said that right. It's actually a massive dam, but that doesn't stop it from being the most interesting thing we've found so far. And a small glimpse of what we'll be looking at a little later. Life. Fish, the care and detail Rockstar is actually known for. And this place is actually really cool to me, as it's the first place that I actually encountered some aquarian wildlife. Nothing compared to what we'll be finding in the ocean, but small schools of fish are actually starting to appear. On top of that, it's a place visibly big enough for the NPCs to visibly sail around in. However, I'm not quite sure how legal it actually is to be sailing around this close to a dam, but I mean, it is GTA. I don't think following the legality of things is on the residents of Los Santos' biggest priority list here. Next up is the biggest lake of the entire game, the Alamo Sea. And this is where some of that rockstar charm really starts to settle into place. There's no crazy Easter eggs or finds per se, but there's a lot of world building taking place here. Like, did you know that the Alamo Sea has its own website in the game? And that it explains that the creation of this lake was actually a man-made accident, which means all of this water here wasn't here originally. And that, if we dive into the lake itself, actually starts to show. As down here we find remnants of what I assume to be old buildings and structures now completely flooded with water. It kind of gives the lake a bit of an eerie vibe, knowing that people presumably drowned in their homes down here from some accident flooding the area. I also came across what looks like a trailer home, so maybe this really is the fate of some of the poorer residents of Sandy Shores. There's also boat wrecks down here. It's incredibly rusty and old, which leads me to believe it's been down here for a while. But what I find more interesting is the fact that all of the water here is incredibly dark and muddy. I mean, I'm barely able to see through the water down here at all. The website I mentioned earlier actually touches on this subject as well, mentioning that it is chocolate brown water. I actually think I found out exactly why this is, as the entire game seems to be sending a certain message as to why its waters, lakes, rivers, and oceans is the way that it is, but we'll get to that a little later in the video. Also, it is so hot here in the summer right now. If this shirt is drenched at the end, we'll just chalk it up as like extra immersion and not actually sweat. However, as we start to leave the mainland and follow the rivers out towards the open ocean, the water itself is rather shallow and doesn't really provide much in terms of secrets, fascinating world building, or even any wildlife. At least not below the water. But you can actually find a lot of people and animals along these rivers. There's a ton of people either fishing or camping outside along these streams. There's also a plethora of wildlife finding their way here to gather and quench their thirst, presumably because the water isn't chocolate brown, as a lot of the nearby water unfortunately is. But as we reach the river's end, we get to the point where I would have normally turned around and headed back home. But instead, this time I chose to dive in and go explore the scary, eerie abyss. And I gotta say, out here there is so many things to encounter, explore, and dive into. It actually took me by surprise just how much work Rockstar has really put into making a place that anyone would rarely ever go or explore feel so alive and exciting. I mean, look at all of this. There's so many corals, plant life, wildlife, and fun rocky arches like this one right here. I'm also extremely surprised and taken aback by the sheer amount of aquatic animals you can come across. The game has scary deadly stingrays, orcas, aka the killer whale. There's hammerhead sharks, there's normal sharks as well, even in all kinds of different colors. It even has cute dolphins. I actually came across so many different aquatic animals, it actually took me by surprise, like the sheer amount of variety of them. You can find them in schools, and by that I don't mean like in a classroom, but as a school of fish. Except for the grandest creature of them all, the big, beautiful humpback whale. I don't know, I always found whales so fascinating and cool, even if I am absolutely terrified of the deep water. Anyway, one of the first things I happened to stumble upon in the ocean itself is this massive crashed airliner right behind me. You can find its parts scattered all across the seabed, and it really is big. Just look at the turbine of this thing. This airliner has also clearly been here a while, as you can see moss and plant life starting to grow on it. But all of this kind of got me wondering, can we figure out the story behind this? And after some searching and digging, I actually found the exact model of this aircraft, and I'm pretty sure it's this one right here, the AT-400. It is quite often seen around the airport of Los Santos. My biggest clue for this, besides the shape of the plane, was on the tail. It is sported with the US Star logo, and the AT-400 can appear in the game with 4 different liveries, one of which is the US Star logo that we're looking for. Interestingly enough though, the colors of the US Star logo version is normally red, whereas it's blue in the one I came across on the bottom of the ocean floor. Now, keep in mind that I'm by no means an expert on planes or aircrafts at all, but I at first for sure thought that this would be a passenger plane. These windows along the side of the plane kind of reminds me of what I normally see on a passenger planes when I go to the airport myself, but when looking inside the wreck itself, it seems mysteriously devoid of any seats or anything else indicating to me that it carried any people. So it's a cargo plane disguised as a passenger airliner? Seems a little strange. But when we move to the front of the plane, I think it starts to make a bit more sense as to why this might be, as the windows are seemingly completely riddled with bullet holes. And this to me seems like a very strange thing to add unless it carries some weight. So my working theory, and following along with me here, is that this plane was carrying some super valuable cargo. Valuable enough so that the plane had to be flying under the radar as a passenger airliner, but was, I don't know, boarded? Infiltrated? Some hostile situation going on here. Shots were fired and the plane ended up crashing to the bottom of the ocean. It could also help explain why none of the cargo is here anymore, as it was valuable and retrieved after the crash by someone. Also, the sounds down here while exploring actually freaks me out so much. Like, listen to this. Luckily for me, the spooky scary sounds were broken by the cute calls of, well, the biggest predator known to the ocean, an orca. Why do they sound so cute if they're actually so scary and dangerous? However, close to this crashed airplane, I came across something different, and I actually have no clue what it is. I might need the help of you guys to figure this out for me. It is this weirdly lit platform with 4 lights on it. At first I thought maybe it was part of the plane crash, but while it's somewhat close, I think it's too far away from it to really be related. It kind of looks like some platform of some kind with these cylindrical metal tubes connected to it. I don't know, maybe it's part of some Humane Labs underground base or offshore utility asset. It is fairly dark down here, so it's kind of hard to tell exactly what it is. I even tried searching the web and asking people who I know are obsessed with GTA and all its Easter eggs, and none of them had really seen it before. So I'm kind of hoping some of you out there know exactly what it is. Anyway, I'm putting you guys on the hunt for this one. It's also worth noting that Rockstar actually had a special pre-order map, and the map, when exposed to UV lighting, would reveal a ton of different secrets on said map. And a lot of these places we'll be visiting throughout the video are visibly marked with an X on the map throughout the entire ocean. However, this specific find isn't actually marked here, and it would be around here on the map. The X close to it being the airliner we just had a look at. Anyway, it could very well be nothing at all, but I'm hoping maybe some of you lore nerds and investigators can tell me exactly what I'm looking at here. Another really eerie and weird thing I came across during my exploration of GTA's ocean is this massive skeleton right here. And at first I thought this might be the skeletal remains of some big scary sea monster, like some Leviathan level threat lurking in the waters like in Subnautica. But I think it's actually a bit more grounded than that, and it appears to me to just be the remains of some big whale. And what really confirmed this for me is that, as we established earlier, you actually find humpback whales swimming around the ocean, which then leads me to believe that this is probably just the skeletal remains of one of them. But what I think is extremely cool, and I seriously really love this, is how Rockstar and their developers love treating their fans with all these little secrets. These hidden finds tucked away in obscure locations with no real reward, despite simply the satisfaction of finding something out of the ordinary. I mean, the average player would never find this on their own. There's nothing guiding you here, and yet here it is, ready for some dude with a green screen to uncover and show it to the world. And it just makes my excitement for GTA 6 even bigger than it already is. However, despite how cool the ocean really is, what lies beneath the dark, muddy waters of the state of San Andreas aren't all happy and pleasant. Not every discovery down here is all colorful with a happy ending, like this military graveyard right here. And I mean, what's more scary than a combination of being drafted for war and all of it happening underwater? Now, I kind of had a look around the place, and from what I can tell, at least, this kind of looks like some World War II type stuff to me, which I'm not really the biggest history nerd, but I don't think any historical World War II battles actually took place around here. However, I have to say that the location of this site is incredibly convenient, as it is literally right outside the Humane Labs and Research facility in the game, which leads me down the path of believing that it has to be part of some conspiracy, some sort of cover-up. So I took a briefer from the water and went back up on land in order to investigate the lab and find some clues. And here I was immediately ambushed and shot at by SWAT teams, the FIB, and the cops, which kind of led me to believe that I was for sure onto something. But yeah, no, I didn't really find any clues besides this truck that kind of looks like one of the army trucks down at the bottom of the ocean. I also really have no clue as to why the cops were called on me in game, but it was a pretty funny coincidence that further fueled my conspiracy for a while. However, around this military site you can find boxes of explosives. You can find metal crates with weird writings on it. And I tried looking up the writing, googling it, anything I could think of, but I eventually came up empty-handed. I am sure there has to be more to this site than meets the eye, but at least for now I'll have to cross this military graveyard off as just a dumping ground for Humane Labs. Some secret, unwanted project that they had to dispose of. Now, nearby this military graveyard, we have one of the most famous and strangely scary and eerie Easter eggs of GTA 5, and also the source of my childhood fear and, dare I say, trauma, and it's the hatch. I believe it's a nod to the hatch from Lost, like the TV show, but anyway, this hatch is the thing that literally instilled a new fear in me as a kid. I remember a friend of mine bringing it up, showing me this video he found on YouTube of the hatch, and it stuck with me, unlocking some new nightmare scenario, being trapped deep underwater in a hatch with no way out, just desperately waiting for someone, anyone, to come rescue you. And what's actually even more eerie is the fact that as you get close, you can see the light of the hatch turn on, meaning whoever is inside hears you approaching and then starts to knock on the hatch like a desperate cry for help. Now, slightly less scary is the fact that the knocking is actually Morse code, with the code translating into, "Hey, you never call. How do you fancy going bowling?" It is very clearly a nod towards Roman from GTA 4 always calling you to go bowling. Without this knowledge, it's a very eerie and kind of terrifying discovery, but then you learn that it's just a Roman Bellic meme and the eeriness kind of dissipates. So yeah, I don't know. Well played to you on that one, Rockstar. You kinda got me on this one. The source of my childhood trauma wasn't actually all that scary after all. Eventually, I also stumbled upon this broken, maybe halfway exploded nuclear submarine. And it honestly looks quite weathered, rusty, and worse for wear. So again, I kinda imagine it's been down here for quite a while. All the rust, wear, and tear caused by the water also made it kinda difficult for me to really investigate this thing. There's no numbers, names, or markings of any kind that I could find, at least. But what I did uncover is something kind of wild and a little scary, because from what I can tell, these things right here are nuclear missile pods. I looked up an image online and it kind of looks like these things right here, and it kind of looks to me like these nuclear missiles right here are just sitting here waiting to go off and take all of San Andreas with it in its nuclear aftermath. So yeah, I'm not sure if we can maybe contact the local government or something, but I think someone should probably retrieve these. It seems to go above and beyond just your average biohazard to have a handful of nukes just laying a few hundred feet from the shoreline. Another weird and slightly eerie discovery I came across was this massive container ship. However, I didn't actually find this ship at first. I just kind of came across some of its containers, as they are scattered far and wide around the ship. This kind of sent me down yet another spiral, trying to figure out what was inside. Why were these containers mysteriously dumped here in the middle of the ocean? Who would do this? But as it turns out, it is most likely rooted in a more normal scenario and is the cargo of this massive shipwreck. That being said, it just kind of gave me a lot more to look into. Me being from Denmark and Mask being one of our prides and joy together with Lego, I was very curious to see if I could find any hints towards this maybe being a Mask ship. However, all I really uncovered was that these containers, if nothing else, are approved for transport with this sticker right here, and a bunch of other logistical numbers that I'm not really knowledgeable enough to fully grasp. But seeing as they're approved, it makes it less likely that there's any illegal goods stored in here. The only clue of any sort on the entire shipwreck comes from this very ominous and ironic text that's written on the ship. "Safety first," written in big, bold red letters as the entire ship is torn in half and sunken to the deep, dark depths of the ocean. There is honestly so many shipwrecks, plane crashes, and whatnot I could show you, but they're not really extremely different or any weirder than the ones we've already covered. So if you do want to explore those, go find them yourself. I'll leave the mystery of those to you, except for one boat. There's one more crash that's kind of cool and very eerie and ominous, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. I'm sure you're just like me and have been on this exact pier about as many times as you've gone to your fridge, opened it up just to realize that no new food has spawned in there since you last checked it 5 minutes ago. But did you know that just over there is the remains of some sort of underwater secret lab? There's this submarine here that you can actually go inside, although it's completely hollow and empty inside, strangely lacking any sort of electronics or cockpit inside. But from the outside, it's pretty clear that this used to be part of some sort of operational underground facility, with pipe networks and the remnants of some sort of structure. There's also this little health pack on the wing of the submarine, so, you know, if you ever happen to be swimming around down here on low health, as you do, you now know where to swim for a quick pick-me-up, so you're welcome. My only real theory here is that, again, this is part of some sort of humane lab structure. Now, it's been a while since I played the story mode all the way through, but I recall a mission where you raid the humane lab facility from underwater by blowtorching some vent off. But I'm like 99% sure that this isn't the place that happens. Remember how I mentioned one last boat? Well, it's this one right here. It's some sort of dinghy or tugboat, and while I do find that pretty fascinating in and of itself, the more important part is right over there. there, as this hides one of the most creepy and straight up terrifying finds in the ocean of GTA. And it's this body right here, found with her hands tied and feet clung together with cement, dumped off presumably from some boat at the surface, only to sink down and drown here, forced to spend the rest of eternity at the bottom of the sea. Now this right here isn't actually the only body found down here. There's another 8 bodies hidden around the ocean, specifically around the northern part of the map, which all ties together for a grand serial killer conspiracy. If you are curious about the Infinity Killer conspiracy, his story, and all of the bodies at the bottom of GTA's ocean, you should check this video out if you somehow haven't already seen it by Bisley. It goes very in-depth and explains it far better than I ever could here in this video. And I also don't want to get sued for identity fraud more than I already am. Anyway, thanks for the title, Bisley. The ocean of GTA 5 is vast, it's deep, and it's far from empty. It's filled with Easter eggs, aquatic life, and sprawling, colorful plants, corals, and fish. But after spending hours underwater, exploring the ocean, scouring it of everything I could find, what really stuck with me wasn't the spooky hatch from my childhood. It wasn't all the dead bodies and the different wrecks. Instead, it was actually something that I noticed in the background of my exploration. Something that Rockstar kept showing me, hinting at, little things that on their own don't really mean much, but when put together like a puzzle, starts to show a story, and a very real one at that. And it all started back at the Alamo Sea. The text on that website, it mentions how dark and muddy the water really is, how the sea came to be by accident, how documentaries have been made concerned by how the fish here seems to die by the masses, how the shore is filled to the brim with waste and trash. And then when you go to the ocean, you're first met with this beautiful, colorful landscape of plants, fish, life, and corals. But as you dive deeper, you find the corals dead, the fish gone. The entire landscape is changing. It honestly gives this incredibly eerie and terrifying vibe as you dive down. The water gets darker as the sun escapes the grasps of the ocean. The ground is dark, covered in the dead remains of coral and underwater floral. As you're staring into the abyss of the game world's edges, into the vast, empty liminal space. Like, I swear, as if I wasn't terrified enough of water as it is, this actually made my heart skip a beat down here. I also came across this massive graveyard of used tires, just dumped into the ocean, filling the seabed completely, burying any and all life under its heavy weight. And to top it all off is this. Debris, trash, and sheer filth covering the ocean as far as the eyes can see. As you come across these things on their own, you don't really think much of it. It's a background drop, it's a fun Easter egg, a silly website telling a story. But when pieced together, I think this becomes the scariest story that Rockstar managed to tell through the entirety of their ocean. I spent my entire time in GTA's ocean looking for conspiracies and finding crazy things to share and talk about. But most of what I found ended up grounded in reality. And while a lot of what I uncovered, like the UFO or the hatch, are fictional, this is something incredibly real and incredibly terrifying. As always, a big thank you to all of my lovely channel supporters for helping me make all of this possible. It genuinely means the world to me. I'm Koff. It was a pleasure, and thank you for watching. Boop!